Welcome to The Definitive Wrap, where we report the truth about American exceptionalism. We love our flag, we love our country, and we believe in America. The Definitive Wrap, where we respect people of faith, the men and women in blue, and our support for Israel. And now, your host, Bela Seabrow on The Definitive Wrap.
Hello, I am Bela Seabrow, and welcome to The Definitive Wrap. Thank you to VIN News for hosting our show. We have a very special episode for our audience about the Israeli elections. You will hear all the details and the latest gossip to update you from our one and only Israeli correspondent, Barry Shaw, from Israel International Public Diplomacy Director at Israel Institute for Strategic Studies. Barry regularly contributes to various media outlets, including the Jerusalem Post, and is a frequent speaker at conferences and pro-Israel advocacy events. Barry Shaw has been a staunch defender of Israel in the public diplomacy arena for decades and has initiated the creation of several pro-Israel grassroots groups. As always, Barry gives a full account of details heard nowhere else. Mainstream media does not cover everything, and Barry will be fascinating our viewers and listeners. Barry, as always, welcome to The Definitive Wrap. It's always a treat
Bela,
and a pleasure to host you.
Being your guest again. Happy.
So let's get right to
pleasure.
it. What's going on in Israel now? Is it 5 elections in 4 years? Who are the main candidates this time around? We want to hear it all.
Yes, we're recording this just basically hours before Israel goes to the polls for, goodness knows how many elections in the last couple of years. So I'll give you a breakdown of where we're at right now. For those of your viewers or listeners who don't know, Israel has a different system to the United States. We have a parliamentary system over here where we vote for parties rather than individuals, so that when I go to the voting booth tomorrow, I won't find a name of any politician on a slip. I'll find a pile of voting slips, and each one has the name or the icon of the party. Take one of those slips, so I want to vote for, place it in an envelope. It's given to me by the staff and deposited in a box. So we're voting for parties. However, I suppose you can't escape the personalities behind the parties. So there is that factor as well.
So why is it 5 elections in 4 years?
Well, it's strange because Israel, if you take a poll among Israelis, you'll probably find at least 60% would call themselves center-right. But what has happened in politics over here is through the party system, there has been a split into basically caused by personalities. And this split has made other parties, which has made life a little more difficult, even for the public who really would like a center-right party or government to find a center-right government, because the split has fractured the political scene so far as parties are concerned into what could be considered center-left, even left outright, and then more radical right as well. So we have a fractured party system over here, and that's what makes life difficult. But I have to tell you that even talking in the last couple of weeks to a lot of people I know, I find people even more undecided the day before going to the election than they were before.
Mm-hmm.
But I hear from a number of people who are not even going to go vote for that. So I expect the numbers to be low. I guess it's become fractious, and you would have thought that, for instance, if we take Benjamin Netanyahu, who has always been the major figurehead for decades in Israeli politics, and even people who have admired him in the past and certainly agree with his politics have been a little bit less put off by his behavior over the last few years. He's obviously involved right now in an ongoing court case. And although I see nothing in a court case that seems to be going on for nearly a year or anything that's been given in evidence that seems to be capable of putting him away, the case is still going on, and there's a feeling that Israeli voters are reluctant to vote for even somebody popular, who is still under the cloud of a court case. We respect the court system, and we feel it should take its course. And they're hesitant because of that. But I think I might have mentioned to you and your listeners in another show that really Benjamin Netanyahu, who found himself in the position in facing charges, fraud and other things like this, out of a sense of what I call hubris, in that his ego has, I suppose it's caused by the admiration of Bibi, both here in the country and also globally, has made him feel and act not right what we prefer as the Israeli prime ministerial role, but almost like presidential, almost like Trumpian, if you like. Mm-hmm. And a lot of Israelis are upset with that. Yes, we've had personalities in our past, whether it's been David Ben-Gurion, Yitzhak Rabin, Arik Sharon, Menachem Begin, call them who you are. But each one sort of knew its place. And then we have this system in which the cases that against him are him trying to either potentially bribe or persuade news editors to give him popular publicity in the newspapers. If he was popular, he wouldn't need to beg or bribe news editors to give him popular publicity. And the other cases against him of wealthy friends bringing him and his wife champagne and his wife's gifts like clothes and jewelry and cigars and things like that. And it tends to leave a nasty taste, not so much in his mouth because he's drinking champagne and smoking cigars, but in the mouth of the Israeli voter. And the other thing that we see is that a number of bright, intelligent people seems to have been driven out of the Likud party, not because they weren't loyal to Bibi, but in fact, that Bibi saw anybody who was really successful in ministerial role as almost being a potential opponent of him in the Likud party. And a lot of people, capable people, have left the Likud and joined or created other parties or retired from politics. And there's a feeling over here that this has demeaned the Likud party, which seems to be represented these days, certainly in this election, with a lot of people where the Israeli public don't have respect for, but they're the yes people around which Bibi has cloaked himself. You understand? And this has driven people away from the Likud, but they don't know which direction to go in. So if we look at some of the opposition in this election to Benjamin Netanyahu, saying those that seem to be drifted away from him are on the center and the center right rather than the right. There are people like, for instance, Gideon Saar has joined with Benny Gantz, who also was under Benjamin Netanyahu, and they formed their own party. Yair Lapid was once in the economy minister in Benjamin Netanyahu government, and he created Yesh Atid. So you have these rival parties and more center. And a lot of, let's say, I would call them middle class, intelligent, university educated people in the Israeli society tend to go with this, although it may not be center right, it's center slightly left, or even more so when they create their coalition. Right. On the other hand, we have the introduction this year of a couple of individuals who have been called racist, creating a party which is now actually the third biggest party in the Israeli elections when it comes to the polling.
Let's talk a little bit about that. Well. Yeah, can we hear a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, okay. So mentioned the Likud and the Yair Lapid's Yesh Atid party, and we've mentioned also the National Unity Party, which is the party of Gidon Saar, who is right wing, together with Benny Gantz, who was the both the IDF commander in chief and the current defense minister, who seems to be left of center. So Israeli voters aren't quite sure where they're going to come down at the end of the day. But then we have what we call the Religious Zionist Party, which, although it's headed by a guy called Bezalel Smotrich, the really guy who is taking a lot of the media attention is his second in number, Itamar Ben-Gvir, who has been really a hot-headed right-winger. He was once, he probably still is, but he denies it. He was an admirer of Meir Kahane, and it's reported that he had a picture of the rabbi that killed a lot of Muslims in the mosque in Hebron. Yeah. And he, although he's denying in this campaign he ever said death to the Arabs, he says he certainly wants death to the terrorists. But apparently he has been attracting a lot of attention and a lot of support from mainly young people. They're certainly, as I said, a religious Zionist party. They firmly believe that Judea and Samaria is part of Israel, and openly have said this, whereas the Likud don't. And they certainly do not want to divide Jerusalem. They have, if you call those legitimate objectives when it comes to politics, fine. But at the same time, as I said, they're heading also for, and they've been saying open that they want to take certain key ministerial positions that are troubling to the rank and file Israeli voter. The Ben-Gvir, for instance, has said openly that if Benjamin Netanyahu was to form a coalition with their party, and there's no way they can form a coalition without it, he is demanding to be the interior security minister, with all that that brings about. The other one, Smotrich, also wants to be the justice minister. And he has said, even ahead of the election, that if he's made the justice minister, he will, by bringing a law, in cancelling the case against Benjamin Netanyahu. And this, of course, for rank and file Israeli voters is something that is really not allowed, because justice must be allowed to take his course. So it's a controversial elections right now with people like this.
Right. So what do you think is expected to happen? What's your prediction?
Yeah, okay, so this is where we come into numbers. I don't want to go into too far into numbers, because quite frankly, I have to tell you and your listeners that if you really want to understand when it comes to numbers, the Israeli voting system, you have to have a Nobel Prize for mathematics, because it takes, there are 120 seats in the Knesset. And it's a simple statistic to know that you have a majority if you have 61 seats. Now, no party is going to get anywhere near, no one party is going to go near 61 seats. So whoever wants to create a government have to form a coalition with some of the losing parties to get to 61 seats. There are other factors coming into it, but I don't want to trouble your listeners right now. But if we put it this way, there are about
you can trouble our listeners, you know.
Yeah, but even if I'm explaining it, it confuses me as well. Right. So I want to keep it as simple as possible, but without tripping myself up. But putting it this way, there are nearly 30 parties, believe it or not, it's full of egos and people with social justice and climate change causes or whatever running in the election. But reality tells us there's going to be about 10 or 11 parties only. That's 10 and 11. You in America, you're lucky if you've got two, like Republicans and Democrats. But we will have about 10 or 11 parties who will make it over the threshold. This is another bit of mathematics. For a party to get over the threshold, to have a minimum of 4 seats in the Knesset, they need a 3.25% of the total vote. That gets them over the threshold. This is why I'm saying the assessment is there's only going to be about 10 or 11 parties. Now, the interest comes is when you need to cobble a government. Because let's say when your listeners hear in a day or so's time, when the results come in, that, for instance, the Likud have the highest number of seats, they will be either 30, 31 seats. That's obviously halfway to a government.
Right.
Lapid will have anywhere between 24 and 27 seats in his blue and white party. So the trick is, which of the two main leaders, which this year will be either Benjamin Netanyahu with the Likud or Yair Lapid with his Yesh Atid party, will be called upon by the president to form a government. And this is where the horse trading comes in. And we know, even in advance, who are the main parties who are going to support either Likud, or if Benjamin Netanyahu can't get to a coalition of 61, then the president Herzog will then go to Lapid and say, okay, your chance, you give it your best shot. So if I do the statistics for you, I'm just going to run through some of the parties, because I'm going off. I did for your show, Bila, I watched all 3 TV channels, so that final polling before election. We can't have any more polling right now. And virtually all of them were the same. And they came out with not only the votes for the individual parties, but the voting bloc that one assumes that, for instance, Benjamin Netanyahu would form, or Yair Lapid. So Yair Lapid will form a coalition. Benjamin Netanyahu will form a coalition with his Likud, with people like the real Zionist, religious Zionists, that's the Smotrich group, who will surprisingly have got either 14 or will get 15 seats, which is more. They went past in the final week, even that of Benny Gantz and Gideon Saar, who will only get, assuming to the last poll, 10 or 11 seats. So the Likud one would be the religious Zionists. And then we have a number of religious parties. We have Shas, which is for the Sephardi Jews, right. What we call the United Torah, which are the Haredi Ashkenazi Jews. They are probably the only parties that the Likud, Benjamin Netanyahu, can cobble together. And it's estimated that they won't make it to 61 votes. They will only make it to 60. So how would Yair Lapid get on? Well, he's got a broader range of parties to go at, because Lapid would have the support of Benny Gantz and Gideon Saar's party, Blue and White. He would have Yair Lieberman's party. He would have the Labour Party. He would have the Meretz party. But even with those, he only and he would have, by the way, there are 3 separate Arab parties running in the election, and it's assuming that one of them will get over the threshold, and that party, as in the current government right now, is in the Yair Lapid party. Even with all that together, Yair Lapid would only get 56, the support of 56 seats. Again, run short. So it seems that nobody, taking the statistics that we've got from the last poll, would really get over the 60 vote to the 61 vote and form a government. However, like in Israel, there's always a however. There are a couple of possibilities. One is that an attractive lady called Ayelet Shaked, who has her own party, she's changed it. It used to be Yamina, by the way. That used to be the party headed by Naftali Bennett, who was a right-wing party, but decided to go in with Yair Lapid and bring Ayelet Shaked with her into a coalition with Yair Lapid and with Meretz and with Labour and with an Arab party, and abandoned his centre-right position. And that turned into a disaster. And this is why we're heading an election. He betrayed his own base, which was centre-right. Now, what Ayelet Shaked has got is she reformed a party which she called the Jewish Home, Habayit HaYehudi. But she has been polling all the time under the threshold. In other words, as I speak to you right now, she is not expected to make it into the Knesset. However, I can tell you that the people I'm speaking to have been telling me that she has been gaining votes in the last few days. But therefore, the point I'm making, if the Israeli public is surprised when we get the results the night after the election, that Ayelet Shaked actually does make 4 votes, she has said she is keeping her party to the center-right. And therefore, she really has only one way to go, and that is with Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, the irony of all this is Benjamin Netanyahu has spent about 3 weeks or a month telling people not to waste their vote to vote for Ayelet Shaked, but give it to the Likud instead. And it could well be this is part of his hubris. It may actually work. What he wished to do may not come true, and it may be the thing that would actually help him create the next government if Ayelet Shaked. So your listeners should listen out for the party called the Jewish Home, Habayit HaYehudi, Ayelet Shaked. And if you see that she pops up with 4 seats, you can say that Benjamin Netanyahu is on his way in creating the next Israeli government.
Oh.
Now,
so,
having said that, if she doesn't make it, one thing I can guarantee is that in the horse trading that would happen after Benjamin Netanyahu is called by the president to form a party, he will reach out to the Arab party, Ra'am, which is an Islamist party, to give him certain positions in his government to join him. But in my impression, my assessment, my strategic political assessment is Ra'am, the Arab party, will say he will not go into any party with Benjamin Netanyahu that has people like Smotrich and Ben Gvir, who he looks at as an anti-Arab racist. He would never, ever sit in a party with him. And Benjamin Netanyahu cannot form a party even with this Arab party, government, even with the Arab party, without this party as well. So Benjamin Netanyahu, in that sense, is between in a hard rock and a hard place.
Right.
I should imagine a lot of your listeners are absolutely totally confused and dizzy from what I'm telling you right now. Well, welcome to Israel, a democratic country on steroids.
From the public's perspective of the citizens of Israel, what is the difference between the Bennett Lapid government as opposed to under Netanyahu?
Right. Okay. Well, people admire Benjamin Netanyahu on the international stage, and they certainly admire him when it comes to economy. And on that, we have to be aware of 2 things. As I said, the Israelis are going into this election really troubled by 2 main factors. One is the economy. The economy is in bad shape. Not as bad as perhaps in America right now. We have inflation at just under 6%. Prices, however, in the supermarkets are going up. Price of petrol is high. Housing is exorbitant over here. Young couples can't afford to buy a house or get a mortgage. The economy is in terrible shape right here for Pakistan. This is a very worrying thing right now. That's the one thing. And security. I just want to remind your viewers that some statistics I just dragged up for your show. There have been over 2,200 terror attacks in Israel in the last year. Let me repeat that. 2,200 terror attacks in the last year. This is the highest number since 2015. Now, you may not have heard that. I know a lot of your viewers, listeners, in fact, most of them, are really pro-Israel and active. But I want you to tell your people over there in America the statistics that I'm giving you, because I don't think you've heard this in your media. We have had daily, twice daily, 3 times, 4 times a day terror attacks going on and this isn't rockets from Gaza, so it doesn't seem to grab your media attention. But anyway, your media only wake up when we have to retaliate for this. But actually, the IDF have been retaliating daily, nightly for the last 3 or 4 weeks, because the terror attacks are coming, funny enough, not out of Gaza, but out of the Mahmoud Abbas's protected areas of the Palestinian cities like Jenin, Hebron, Shechem, places like this in what they call over there the West Bank, what we call Judea and Samaria. This is territory that we gave back to, at that time, Yasser Arafat, as a gesture of peace in the Oslo Accord. And we've been terrified by the people ever since. We've had massive campaigns going on this last 2 or 3 weeks. Our soldiers are going in there every night to try and break up and arrest people and destroy bomb making materials, going after kidnapping, capturing, rather, arresting some of the main terrorists. But it's going up under the watchful eye of the Palestinian Authority. In fact, some of the people who have been attacking us are Mahmoud Abbas's Palestinian Authority security forces. So yes, security is a major issue right now. And although we've had Benny Gantz as a defense minister, there's certain things that he's done that aren't really popular over here either for the Israeli public. So if you hear that the Israeli public are moving more over to what you would call the radicals like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, it's simply because we're so exhausted with the terror, the fear that a lot of people are living with. And most of those fears are living around people living around in Hebron and Jerusalem and some of the more sensitive areas. They don't seem to have ventured too much, although they used to, coming over towards Tel Aviv, Hadera, Netanya, and other places like this. But they do come over. And this has to be stopped. And I suppose, in a sense, this election could be on the Israeli voters voting for a government that's going to come down really hard to put an end to this terrorism. And that is probably one of the dividing factors. And it's certainly one that when people like Ben-Gvir goes to the schools and some of the universities and some of the towns and speak to the youth there and says, you vote for me, I'll put an end to this. And he wants, for instance, death sentence for terrorists, which a lot of young people get behind. So these are very burning issues over here.
Right. We have just a few more minutes left, so let's see how much we can get in. What are the main issues for Israeli voters? Meaning, from a political standpoint, what are the fears for Israeli voters?
I'll tell you what the biggest fear is, and it's one that, quite frankly, as of right now, as I sit before you right now, be my fear as well. Our fear is that this election isn't going to be the last election. My fear is there's not going to be anybody capable of forming a government. I don't think Benjamin Netanyahu, if he gets 59 or 60, will be able to form a government. I don't believe, therefore, that Yair Lapid, whose party is going to be less than him, is going to be able to form a government as well. Now, the only solution that you would think, if people were clear thinking over here, that the Israeli people would say to both of them, Benjamin Netanyahu, Yair Lapid, climb down from your hubris and your narcissism and everything, and what the Israeli voters would love to do is knock their two heads together and say, we need a consensus government of the Likud and, let's say, the Yair Lapid coming together and forget all these fractious side groups as well. There you would have certainly way beyond 65. You would have probably about 7, if you take 3 parties or 4 parties together, then you could have a government of 70 plus members of the representing the center left and the center right coming together. But again, because of personalities and hubris over here, I don't believe this is going to happen. And I suppose our greatest fear, and this is the fear of people who will not be going to vote this year, is that this won't be the last election. Look at it this way: what's going to happen? Whatever the vote is in, and Benjamin Netanyahu has the most seats, the president will give him 3 weeks to form a coalition. If he can't form a coalition, workable coalition of more than 61, 62, and 61, the Israelis know, even if votes are governed to 61, it's not going to last because it's on a margin end of breaking down over some dispute between a minister or a politician and Benjamin Netanyahu, and then we're off to a vote anyway. And the same with the other side as well. So and the reason they're not going to vote, because people are saying me, we'll see what happens between now and next time. The next time, they mean in March. The fear is March of next year, we will be going to the another vote. And there's really, unless we can get the big parties sitting together in a general coalition with a large majority, the only other solution is to lift the threshold from 3.25% to maybe 5 or 6%, which would cut out a lot of the small fringe parties. And then you have perhaps more chance of getting fewer parties, but more serious parties, not ones based on personality and egos.
Right. One last question. For those who do not live in Israel, please tell us how a typical election in Israel works, meaning what are the requirements to vote?
Sorry, your question, what if somebody was voted left wing, who would they vote for?
I mean, who can vote? Who is able to vote?
Who can vote in Israel?
Yes.
Okay. It's a good question. I want to tell you, Israel is a very progressive, democratic country. Everybody who is an Israeli citizen, whether he's Jewish, Arab, Christian, or Druze, Bedouin, vote, right? The system over here, let's compare it with America. I know there's a lot of talk over there about absentee votes and people can't get identification cards and whatever. You need one thing. You need one thing to vote, and that is, let me put it this way: every Israeli has an identity card. Okay, every Israeli. So it doesn't matter whether you're a Bedouin living in the Negev or the Druze or the Arabs or wherever, or you're living somewhere in the Shtachim somewhere. Everybody has an identity card. So nobody can say, I don't have an identity card. That's Israel. And also, every Israeli is sent a voting slip telling me, for instance, this is my name. It tells me where I have to go to vote. It tells me I have to take my identity card with me. So I go to the place I've been sent to vote, right? And I go there and I go to a table. Everybody in Israel show their identity card. You leave it with the clerk on the desk. You're giving an envelope. You go behind a screen. You've got this whole array of all sorts of labels for all the different parties. You pick up one, you put it in an envelope, you put it in the box, and they give you your identity card back. Nobody in Israel, you don't get the excuse absentee votes. Everybody finds a way somehow or other to a voting station. Right. And I know that Israel isn't as big as America. Okay. That's right. Okay. But everybody, whether it's the Bedouin in the Negev, they have their voting stations and everything. They make their way there. Everybody votes. So the system is certainly one where the voting system is fair and applicable. In fact, this year, I want to tell you what I'm hearing is that increasingly up to I've been hearing from the Arab electorate over here is that fewer. Oh, by the way, in the parliament, there are a couple of parties who are anti-Israel parties in the Knesset. I mean, I don't know. Do you have any parties in your Congress right now who are anti-American? I suppose based on what some people are saying, I suppose there are. But
never know.
But over here, we have 2 or 3 Arab parties who are what they call Arab nationalists, who are there, but really they're holding the seats for the end of Israel, and yet they sit in the parliament, in the Israeli Knesset. Now, increasingly, the Arab concern is one of security, because what has been growing in Arab society is a lawlessness and a criminality and a violent criminality. And there have been in large sections of the Arab communities in Israel, from places like al-Fahim, which sits, if you know Israel, somewhere between Hadera and Afula, or down in the Negev, when I talked about the Druze, such an outbreak of illegal weapons and guns and robberies and things like this, and extortion going on with weapons that the police have been going in to bring. So security, their own community security. I'm not talking terrorism here. I'm talking about the violence within the Arab societies. And this has been leading, and it will lead this year, with a greater number of Arab voters voting for non-Arab parties. It could be those on the Israeli left, like Meretz or Labour, and some are even voting for Benjamin Likud, because they want a strong party to come and impose law and order in the Arab communities right now. This is a strange phenomenon, and I'm happy you raised the question, because what you're seeing here is really, I suppose by American terms, you would call it progressivism of Israel, where more and more Arab voters will be voting for proper Israeli parties. I hesitate to call them Jewish parties, but parties, non-Arab parties, you want to say that this way. And I'll remind your listeners as well, we already have an Arab party who was sitting in the last government, the Ram party, which is the Islamist party, sitting with in the Yair Lapid and Benny Gantz government as well. Okay. So this is the normalization of Arabs into Israeli society, and it's a very welcome phenomenon.
Barry, thank you so much. Always a wonderful experience. As I said,
we're going to have the. Well, you might be needing me on in the days following the election, because you're not going to get a result, and the horse trading begins over there. And if your viewers want me on to give an explanation how the election turned out and what's happening and what we can predict, happy to be your guest.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you to VinNews and to our audience for tuning in.
Thanks for listening to The Definitive Wrap with your host, Bela Seabrow. Be sure to tell your family and friends they also can catch The Definitive Wrap on Apple Music, Spotify, Google Play, and your favorite streaming service. See you next time on The Definitive Wrap.